The Masonic connections with him is very curious, being the Illuminati protected Luther back when the Vatican was out to attack both Illuminati and Luther. I'm, yeah, look, I have hints of Martin Luther being very much involved in secret societies. While I haven't yet found any hard evidence, there seems to be some evidence that he may well have been very senior within certain secret societies, and within two of them possibly. But I'd need to get into the Gnostic connections with Martin Luther, his Gnostic beliefs, and then try to find more evidence for the occult connections, the secret society, things like groups that would be probably precursors of the Rosicrucians and so on. So, but who were Martin Luther and Adolf Hitler, right? They are arguably two versions of each man. Luther is renowned today as the initiator and leader of the Protestant Reformation. Now, recently, when I started discussing Martin Luther and his impact on the Reformation, of course, his leadership and initiation of the Reformation as the most important man, who was celebrated in 2017, celebrated worldwide, copious videos, copious Protestants discussing Martin Luther as a great man who initiated the Reformation, stood up against the evil Catholic Church and won. There was just video after video, historical exhibition at museums. And then, of course, when I started putting out the information on Martin Luther, suddenly, on Thaddeus's channel, for instance, Protestants started lying to me and saying very bluntly, no, Martin Luther had nothing to do with the Reformation. It was really happening long before Luther came along. There were guys called Fred and another guy called Jimmy. There was a guy called Angus, and they were involved in kicking off the Reformation 100 years before. He had nothing to do with it. Yeah, right, for sure. Definitely, because, yeah, that's what embarrassment causes. Centuries later, Lutherans and Germans alike admire and honor him for his bold and daring actions against the Catholic Church. The pervasive portrayal of Luther is simple, the young, impassioned monk who took on the Roman Church and won. However, he is much more complex with a darker side that is much less well known. Hitler was adept at hiding who he really was. He was careful not to let people get close to see behind the facade. Protestant Christians were careful to let only Luther's legacy live on, while downplaying the less favorable version. And this much is well known and is very, very true. Right, Hitler was perhaps the anti-Christian avatar of Luther as far as Jews are concerned, yeah. In a real sense, yeah. The people were very kind, but let me tell you, the head priest of the local Lutheran church came an old creepy man, and what a... Okay. Upside down pentagram with Baphomet. Wow, that's weird. Yeah, so look, according, as I've discussed in the past, after Martin Luther, between the 1600s and the 1800s, what you had was Protestants trying to claim a lineage direct to the apostles, and in every case, and I've had this, I went through the evidence, the historical evidence in the past, they went through heretics, they went through the Albigensians, they went through the Cathars, they went through Gnostics. Flaming heretics were claimed as their root because anything but Catholic. So therefore they would try and find a way, and so thus flaming, obvious, known heretics were supposedly the founders of original Christianity and the forefathers of Protestant Christianity, and yeah, really, really odd. So let's continue. There is no hiding the evil that occurred under Hitler's reign. The sinister side of Luther has been well hidden since his time. Well, the internet is going to open that door. Those skeletons are going to come out of the closet, allowing only his enlightened and reformist persona to be remembered and hailed. Many would be surprised to find out that Luther was extraordinarily anti-Judaic, and he became increasingly more vile and more hateful as he aged. He wanted to convert the Jews, and he took their refusal personally, eventually became consumed with bitter hatred. His rage led to texts and sermons that explicitly detailed why the Jews were wicked and what should be done, up to and including murdering them. There is little difference between anti-Semitic ideologies of Martin Luther and Adolf Hitler. So Martin Luther was highly nationalistic, as was Adolf Hitler, although Adolf Hitler had a particular slant to his particular nationalism. Right? The descriptions of Luther continue to fit with other well-known anti-Semitic revolutionary with affection for the German people, Adolf Hitler. The significant similarities between Luther and Hitler deserve thorough exploration. More importantly, what led them to live a life filled with rage and hatred, and why was it directed towards the Jews? Now, I have seen plenty of Christians claiming Hitler was the good guy. And what's wrong with anti-Semitism? We should hate the Jews. We're supposed to hate the Jews. Jews are evil. We should kill them. That's Christians. I've seen this It's all over YouTube. It's in the chat. It's in the comments. I've seen it. So, yeah, although Jesus, as I recall, did say, forgive them. They know not what they do. But Christians know better. And these Christians, these particular Christians know better. And so, yeah, that's that. Okay, was there something about the German people in particular that allowed them to be susceptible to the leadership of Luther and Hitler? Now, this paper, what I'm discussing, is going to be relevant to my discussions on Martin Luther, the history of Germany, and how Luther changed the psyche of the German people, how Luther introduced warfare, introduced violence, introduced slaughter into German history, and created an aggression in German culture, which of course we've seen in the 20th century as World War I and World War II, which were very much influenced by Darwinism. So he altered the psyche of the German people and left them open to these views. Francis Boole says, Protestants would refuse to call Saint Mary Mother of God because it doesn't feel right for them, but when it comes to Martin Luther, he's such a saint. Yeah, it's insane. Once we unpack Luther, you're going to discover Martin Luther was a blasphemous heretic. The man was a vile, disgusting human. Absolutely shocking human being, but we shall be discussing. So we will explain how Luther laid the foundation for Hitler's Holocaust. Now, of course, what I'm going to hear is that, well, that's on those people for misrepresenting and misinterpreting Martin Luther. No, they read Luther 100% and they followed Luther's 5-step plan to the letter. Okay, so let me see. Interesting that this information is not widely known. Now, when you read through academia, this is well known in silos in academic papers. It's just not something that Protestant theologians talk about. When you go through the volume of papers, you'll find that Martin Luther was known to have created an extremely warlike culture. After his passing, Germany turned warlike. War increased, right? Because Catholics bad, Protestants were the good guys, and therefore the amount of deaths due to war under the Protestants doubled, right? Protestants developed military technology to fight wars and kill people better because they were the good guys. We will get to all of that as we go. I feel much freer now that I'm certain the Pope is the Antichrist. So Martin Luther, and we're going to be going through Martin Luther was a superb propagandist. He wrote the most insulting, disgusting things. You'd be shocked at the kind of, I was shocked at the kind of thing that he wrote, the kind of things he said.